Well, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for today's live presentation on the FMCSA's electronic logging mandate, what you need to know. Just given the nature of the topic, we have a lot to cover, and it's you can imagine it's a lot to squeeze in. We're trying to keep this around 30 minutes, so we're going to do the best we can, but if you do have to drop off, if we go over maybe a few minutes, just please keep in mind that we are recording this webinar, and we'll be sending a link out at the conclusion of it so that you can review it in its entirety at your leisure. Just to put a face to a name, I'm Rich Sordahl. I'm responsible for marketing here at Drivers Alert. And a little bit about us, we have more than 1,500 clients, 350,000 plus vehicles currently under contract, and that translates into literally millions of documented unsafe driving events that we have shared with our clients over the 27 years of our existence. We are also a trusted partner with more than 100 companies in the insurance industry today. But the one theme over the 27 years of our existence since our inception in 1989 is definitely innovation. We were one of the pioneers in the 1-800-HOW's My Driving product. And also along the way, we've rolled out many firsts within the How's My Driving space. We're also the first company to offer closed-loop corrective action process, essentially really pioneering e-learning for fleets by taking that training and using it as a way to improve driver behavior beyond just the identification and documentation of unsafe driving behavior. We had just used that for How's My Driving and telematics, but now we are also adding it to our MVR solution. And also, as part of that corrective action process, we've just released a new course on failure to yield. We're also the first company to provide a safety-based telematics application going beyond the traditional operational vehicle operational metrics such as miles per gallon, route optimization, engine diagnostics, things of that nature, to really focus on the driver, because the Driver's Alert, we do believe when it comes to fleet safety that the driver is the biggest variable. Or also, I guess a few months ago, we released the next generation e-learning product, which is the newest and freshest content available in the industry today, and also have just really unveiled, if you will, actually very new, is the most comprehensive motor vehicle monitoring solution in the business. So really looking at, on a continuous basis, the MVRs of your drivers and really seeing if there's any change in status. And so again, that's the most comprehensive coverage in the business. But really, we're here to talk about today is the electronic logging devices and why use an ELD. Well, there are many reasons, and they have all different varying levels of importance. Now, the information on this slide here is really based on what the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has come to find based on its research, that first and foremost, if you look at the paperwork alone with respect to record of duty status, the driver filling it out, submitting it, the clerk filing, elimination of paper driver logbooks, that you're looking at about $705 a year per user in paperwork alone. Now, if you figure that that's about 20 hours of work per year, over that course of time, you actually can recover almost $2,000 in lost revenue if you're an owner-operator charging a rate of about $1.92 a mile for dry van operation. And also, the FMCSA has given an estimate on accident reduction of about just under $200 per user per year if you're a long-haul ELD user, and $126 per year if you are a short-haul ELD user. And of course, fines from hours of service violations. Since 2016, the right at the beginning, there have now been more than $200 million of fines issued. So that is nothing at all to sneeze at. And of course, beyond that, it's going to be the law. December of next year, it will be a mandate that you will have to use ELDs. But if none of that is important enough, well, then think about the exposure to litigation. I think most of you are probably familiar with this story. This is the Mercedes Sprinter minibus that carried comedian Tracy Morgan. In June of 2014, they were traveling down the New Jersey Turnpike, about 45 miles south of New York City, and struck by a Walmart tractor trailer. And the driver was believed at the time to have fallen asleep, which caused this accident, which also resulted in a multi-car pileup. Now, Morgan suffered from head and brain trauma, multiple broken ribs, a broken leg, and nose. And his longtime comedian friend James McNair unfortunately succumbed to his injuries. According to the NTSB, the driver was very close to the federal limits of 14 hours of continuous on-duty work and 11 hours behind the wheel. And according to the lawsuit filed by Morgan, it alleged that prior to the start of the driver's shift, Walmart had forced the driver to drive from his home in Jonesboro, Tennessee to a Walmart distribution center in Delaware. This was a distance of approximately 750 miles, and it took more than 11 hours. So essentially, by the time that the accident had occurred, the driver had possibly been awake for as long as 24 hours. So the complaint alleged that really Walmart should have known that the driver was forced to drive in a fatigue state when he went on duty. But the upshot of all this is that Walmart was ordered to pay McNair's children $10 million, and some sources report that Morgan received $90 million, but this figure still has not been verified. So no question about it, when it comes to hours of service and ELDs, this is an incredibly important topic. So today's goals, Paul Murray is going to talk about what an ELD is and the components of this ELD mandate rule. He will also discuss the who must comply with this rule, including exemptions and any important dates that are pending, and then discuss a little bit about technical requirements, how ELDs work, and then touch on the topic of harassment of drivers by motor carriers leading to violations of hours of service rules. And then, of course, we'll open it up to some questions and then finish it off by announcing the winner of the Starbucks gift card. So on to Paul Murray. Paul has been with Drivers Alert now for several years. He serves as our resident spokesperson on all things related to fleet safety management. Having personally worked with hundreds of companies, he understands firsthand what it takes to create fleet safety programs that wreck fewer vehicles and hurt fewer people. Paul often visits clients, conducts media interviews, and speaks at industry conferences. His high level of engagement with the market and industry has directly led to many product innovations and enhancements here at Drivers Alert. So with all that said, I'll turn it over to Paul Murray. Paul?
Thanks, Rich. Let me just grab my presenter back and want to confirm you can see my screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So again, everyone, thanks for joining our presentation today on ELDs, kind of the mandate, what they are, and then we're going to have some talking points and questions at the end. But kind of as we start off, to define it, what is an ELD? What is an electronic logging device? It's something in the vehicle, a piece of technology that automatically records a driver's time from when they sign into the ELD in the morning to when they sign out at the end of the day or their duty status at the end of the day, and it chronologically takes in everything they do from driving, on duty, not driving, off duty, to their break after a few hours, to putting themselves in a sleeper berth if they are a over-the-road trucker that is only home once or twice a week. It's also a device that facilitates accurate recording of a driver's hours of service. It does it completely automatically. Thirdly, it meets the technical specifications. Again, the ELD rule is very technical. I believe it's over 500 pages of mandate. So there's a lot of technical specifications. And lastly, it's synchronized with the actual engine of a commercial motor vehicle or CMV that your employees may be driving. Now, just very high-level major components of the ELD rule. It was published in December of 2015, and it has a lot of guidelines, requirements for the mandatory use of ELDs. And one of them is for anyone that is required today to prepare records of duty status, or as we'll refer to it in the presentation as RODS. It also has guidelines of minimum performance and design standards, because again, there's different variations, but there can't be too much variation from the norm. Requirements for hours of service supporting documents for each different ELD. And then lastly, as Rich mentioned, there's harassment. So we want to prevent harassment through the use of ELDs. Now, who's required to use an ELD? Any interstate CMV driver that's currently required to keep RODS. Again, that's governed in the 395 CFR. Now, a lot of people say, what is a CMV? Is my F-250 a CMV? Is my, truck a CMV? Is my car a CMV? It all depends. It's any vehicle that's greater than 10,000 pounds, or any vehicle that's placarded for hazmat transportation. Now, you may have a vehicle that is transporting 9 people for commercial hire. That's a CMV, or somebody that's, for instance, like a church bus, a school bus, that is 16 passengers or greater for non-commercial use. Now, with every rule in the world, or almost every rule, there are exemptions. So who doesn't have to use ELD? Now, there's 5 big categories. The first is someone that's under 100 air miles allowed to use time cards. Now, someone that falls 150 air miles or less for non-CDL freight drivers may continue to use time cards. Now, that's somebody like a furniture delivery organization that may have operations, let's just say in South Florida, that delivers to Tampa, which may be a 200-mile drive, but it falls under that 150 air miles. A driver that's operating drive-away, tow-away. Any vehicle manufactured based on VIN number before the year 2000. And then lastly, seasonal people, seasonal drivers. Someone that drives for less than 8 days during a 30-day rolling window period, or again, your seasonal drivers or temporary individuals, or someone that may work in an office and has to jump in a truck once or twice a month. They are not required to use an ELD. Now, a couple important dates. Again, that ELD rule was published on December of 2015. The voluntary use of ELDs began 60 days after, so you'll see about mid-February 2016. Now, anyone today using paper logs, you are required to be compliant with ELDs in all of your trucks December of 2017. The FMCSA has actually given a 2-year window of grace. If you're using an AOBRD, which most solutions are today, you actually have till December of 2019. Again, AOBRD is compliant with the old reg, which was 395.15, that were installed before the compliance date or before that December 2015 date. You actually have an additional 2 years to be compliant. That gives you time, as we see in this slide, to upgrade or replace, again, with an ELD. But again, anyone using paper logs, the hard and fast date for compliance is December of 2017. Now, as you discuss kind of the awareness and transition from what you're doing today, whether it's an ELD or AOBRD or paper log, there's a certification and compliance test that the FMCSA mandates to make sure that what you're doing is seen to them as compliant. Motor carriers can choose voluntarily to use ELDs, AOBRDs, or device with logging software programs versus a driver using paper logs today. But again, based on what you're doing today, you either have a year or 3 years to be compliant. Again, on the FMCSA's website, authorized safety officials, they need to distinguish the types of different devices and cite appropriate regulation, because again, there are tons of different AOBRDs on the market today. Some will pass and become ELDs, and some will obviously go in other directions. They don't want to have 100 different companies doing 100 different things 100 different ways. And then lastly, what the mandate does is it established harassment legal procedures. Now, this is a typical system package. This is something that Drivers Alert sells. We've partnered with Geotab. They are by far the undisputed industry leader in black box telematics for vehicles. So you pair, again, we talked about being synchronized into the engine. We need a whole host of data from the vehicle's ECM, which we'll discuss. But again, that Go device will capture all of that data that we're required to have today. With this cable, or the IOX USB, this passes information from the vehicle's ECM or engine computer to our EDL, whether it's a phone or tablet, for compliance. And then lastly, we have in the vehicle the ELD itself, whether it's a phone or tablet. And then if it was a tablet and it doesn't go from vehicle to vehicle, we might want to mount that tablet in a lockable cable or a lockable box, etc., and have it mounted to the vehicle. Now, All of these HOS app requirements pertain to, again, the GeoTab solution that we sell, which is called Drive. It's our hours of service app. You've got to have an iOS or Android device. 7-inch screen is preferred for viewability, but it is not required. Again, the device has to have a built-in 3G or LTE cellular modem, built-in GPS, etc. Now today, a lot of folks are running AOBRDs. They'll either have to be upgraded to an ELD or they'll have to go through the compliance certification test, self-certify and say, okay, I am now an ELD, I'm compliant, I've got everything that I need as part of the 395 reg. But today what an AOBRD is basically this solution. It's synchronized into the engine and it's automatically recording driver statuses. You don't have to worry about clicking driving when you stop, clicking on duty not driving, taking yourself off duty, etc. That all has to be done automatically. There are some even free solutions for owner-operators that are simply just logging software. There's no synchronization between the between the engine's computer and the phone itself. You manually input your driving duty status. Now with a paper log, you may update it every hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, etc., depending on what you're doing. Very easy to update a paper log. But let's say you started driving at 2 o'clock. I'm in South Florida, it's 4:15, 4:16. Let's say I've been driving since 2. That's 2 hours and 15 minutes of drive time. On my app, I'd have to take an annotation, or I'd have to do an edit to a log. Too many of those, and you're on the side of the road getting a DOT roadside inspection, and a DOT officer is going to ask, hey, Paul, why do you have 12 exemptions or annotations in the last week? You know, I forgot to update my status, etc. It just doesn't ever look good. Now with ELD, we do have minimum technical specifications or standards. They're generally based on performance. Want maximum flexibility for minimum cost. Again, we need consistent standardization of output. Again, DOT officer on the side of the road doesn't want to be sitting there for an hour doing a roadside inspection. They want to see your logs, they want to look at your truck, they want to let you get on your way. And then again, we have to have minimum output requirements because again, how many people are doing ELD and ARB today? We want to make sure that the DOT officer is not confused with what they're looking at. Now with AOBRDs and then ELDs as well, we're synchronized to the engine's control module. We're monitoring a whole host of information from that black box, like where you're going, how fast you're going, etc. You know, a lot of safety information. But for the ELD, the only couple things we're looking for is engine power status, vehicle motion, how many miles you're driving, and engine hours. Very simple. Some of the other information that the device may record is date and time, where the vehicle is, the geographic location, how many engine hours, miles, who's driving the vehicle. That's always important. We need to associate Paul Murray's behind the wheel of truck 224. Got to be compliant, have to have that. VIN number, again, if a vehicle is manufactured 2000 or newer. And then lastly, the GeoTab software or your ELD software should have your motor carrier identification data, your DOT number, and your home office address. Now for part of your duty status change logs, you're going to have event data recordings, such as engine power up and shutdown. You see driver log in, log out. Some companies are more lenient than others. They allow people to take company vehicles home at the end of the day, back to the office on a Monday. Things like malfunctions and certification of driver's daily records. Now we discuss geolocations. Again, the little black box is going to tell us where we are. It's going to transmit to the ELD and match up in the cloud. Now we're not required to show you on 123 Spring Street. If you're driving on duty, we actually only have to be accurate down to 1 mile. If you're, again, one of those lucky few that allows to use a vehicle for personal use, we only have to be accurate down to a 10-mile radius. So we're going to show lat and long to a nearby city. Now there are a couple manual inputs on account setup. You'd load in your drivers and your support personnel, and those kind of folks are defined as mechanics, dispatch, regional safety folks, etc. Anyone that needs access to see where a vehicle is or how many more hours a driver has or any violations that are either accrued or accruing. And then for drivers, the only real manual inputs they've got are annotations when applicable. And again, we always urge on the side of less is more. Location description, and that's only when prompted by the ELD. A driver, when he or she logs in, they're going to associate themselves with a vehicle. They're going to add trailer number. They're going to add shipping document information if they have one, etc. Now, the ELD has to be able to identify diagnostics and malfunctions with things such as detected or cleared. Now, this is from the black box to our ELD, whether it's a phone or tablet, things like, again, not going to read them all, but power, timing, data recording and transfer, unidentified driver, etc. And in this case, you can provide a paper log backup if your device does malfunction. That is acceptable to the DOT. Now, when you're pulled over on the side of the road, you actually have two different ways to show your logs. And on the device itself, the driver has the ability to see the last 7 days of logs. On the data management portion, which location managers have, or safety individuals, or regional vice presidents, we only maintain the last 6 months of logs in a rolling window because we don't ever want to provide more information to the DOT than we're required. If it's there at 2 years old, there's a violation, they can and will act upon it and enforce a monetary fine. So what we do is we provide either a printout. Now again, not all ELDs provide this. Some of the more expensive devices like the $2,000 ELDs can provide a printout, or a screen display visible to enforcement what's determined at a reasonable distance, meaning Paul Murray doesn't have to get out of the vehicle and have Johnny Law jump in the truck and manipulate the hardware. I can pass the phone over it, again, as long as I'm not driving. Now, I'm not going to read all these today. Anything in black is what is required through AOBRD, and all of the ELD additions are here in red. So you can see quite a lot of information in part of that 516-page ELD mandate for the 395. Again, just an example of what an ELD solution would provide you. Again, you have things like DOT number, time zone, driver ID number, the starting, ending odometer, how many miles are traveled, etc. Now here is a midnight to midnight 24-hour duty status grid. You can see driver was started off in the sleeper berth until 10 a.m., was on duty for an hour, drove for 4 hours, again off duty for 2. So you can see how this is. Now these grids have to be 6 inches wide by 1.5 inches tall. Now I don't know about anybody on the call, but I have a hard time reading a lot of this. This is an actual driver's log. So typically what fleets do is a driver would fill this out, it would be scanned and sent to a third party. They would audit the log and they would actually create this computerized grid log and send back. I can tell you this driver drove 486 miles today in a 24-hour period. I can see the date of 6/26/2013. I can't make out the address. I can't make out the home terminal address because it's the same as this, looks like Los Volcanoes Road maybe. I can see it looks like Albuquerque Carthage, but I definitely cannot read this information below. So if I was a roadside inspector, I'd be questioning this individual's log a lot. What does this say? What does this say, etc. Now this is what our solution does. It creates a very concise, easy to read grid log. And if I was clicking on my logs itself, it would show my duty status change in chronological order only for the last 7 days. Again, we don't want to give the DOT more information than they need. We talk about everything being automatic. I simply sign in as a driver. I click on duty. I can do my DVIR. I can send a notification to management. I can do whatever I need to do as a driver. Once I start driving the vehicle, automatically puts me in driving. Again, I can see my duty status change logs here in chronological order. anything from my start all the way to my end of day, and you can see odometer, engine hours, event type, and then the origin. Is it automatic or is it a driver inputting information? Now, as we get close to wrap up, kind of a little bit of harassment, or a little bit about harassment, I should say. Many different definitions, but in this case, harassment is any action taken by a motor carrier that the carrier knew or should have known would result in a driver violating their hours of service. Again, we heard the Walmart story. Was it or wasn't it harassment? Leave that up to you. Carrier's actions must be based on information from an ELD or other technology. And then a carrier who harasses a driver actually receives a penalty, monetary, in addition to the hours of service violation. Now, in summary and in closing, we covered what is an ELD today, some of the components, who must and must not comply, and then again, those exemptions and important dates, a lot of technical requirements, kind of the ins and outs of how the ELD works, and then we finished up with harassment that lead to hours of service violations. So what I want to do now, I know we're kind of bumping up against that 30-minute window for everyone that's been patient, is I'd like to kick it back over to Rich Sordahl. He's got a couple housekeeping items, and then we're going to discuss any questions that have come up. So Rich, I will make you the presenter.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. So what we're going to do at this time is we're going to open up to questions. If anybody does have anything that they would like addressed by Paul this time, please use your online chat feature, and we will address those as they come in. I'll give you just a few seconds for that. Looks like we do have one now. One question for you, Paul, is that can a smartphone or other wireless device be used as an electronic logging device?
Thanks for the question, Rich. Yes, absolutely. As long as that device meets technical requirements and is certified to be registered with the FMCSA, absolutely. Like an iPhone, an Android phone, a tablet, whether it's an Android tablet or an iPad, absolutely. As long as it's connected to the internet and can send data to and from our cloud, yes.
Okay, great. And we do have another question. I think we're looking really more for clarification on the topic of really saving time and money. So I think the best way to ask this question is, how does the ELD mandate really save you time and money? I mean, maybe you can kind of elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So as drivers fill out those RODs or records of duty status, a driver that operates a vehicle 5 days a week fills out an average of just over 240 of those. That's a driver about 20 plus hours of time per year used to fill out those records of duty status. So that's saving time right there. Now, paperwork savings, from ordering your paper logs to sending them in, waiting to come back, the man hours is simply about $705 to $750, depending on who your paper log provider is today, in only paperwork savings. And then there's obviously soft costs involved, like a third party that you're paying to audit your logs, or somebody internal at your organization that you're using to send the logs out, get them back, and then obviously upload them to driver files.
Okay, good. And this question, I think, looking for just some clarification on some of the terminology. So really, are EOBRs and AOBRDs, are they considered ELDs?
So they are not. AOBRDs and EOBRDs are not an ELD. ELD has a whole host of more requirements that we saw in one of those slides in red. We're asking for a lot more information from the driver. It's all populated automatically, but it's more of an in-depth or deeper dive into the logs of a driver. It is automatically updating everything, and it's getting location, trajectory, speed, everything from the vehicle's engine computer.
Okay, I think we'll take one more question, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I think this question is related to Multiple vehicles. So if you have a driver that uses different trucks over the course of the week, will the reporting be by truck or by driver should that person be pulled over?
Thank you for the question. So records of duty status through an ELD are kept per driver. So if I operated truck 204 Monday, a different truck Tuesday, a different truck Wednesday, I would have my logs per me, Paul Murray. It wouldn't matter what vehicle I operate. And that is something you have to be compliant because, again, drivers will slip seat in the course of their job.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. And again, to respect everyone's time, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up and keep this to our 30-minute time limit. If you do have any additional questions or concerns related to, the specifics such as the types of ELD devices that you can use or anything related to this, please go ahead and give us a call at the number shown on the screen or shoot us an email at sales@driversalert.com. We will be sending a follow-up email very soon that includes a link to a survey. We're always looking to get feedback on things that we're doing well and things that we can improve on. We do take it very seriously and incorporate any of that feedback into subsequent presentations. There will also be a link to a recording of this presentation as well as an introduction to our customer referral program. And now at this time we're going to go ahead and announce the winner for the Starbucks gift card. And that individual is, I hope I'm pronouncing this correct, Dairo Castro at Flamingo Appliance. First name spelled D-A-I-R-O, Castro. So congratulations for your gift card, and also keep in mind that we do these webinars on a very frequent basis. So if you would, please check out our website at driversalert.com to stay up to date on any upcoming events and what those topics may be. Do look forward to your participation in another live event in the very near future. So thanks again for joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.